In a previous video, we talked about the CHITUBOX and Chitu Systems SDK being released. And, well, wouldn't you know, more red tape. We've got our hands on the license agreement for both a for-profit and non-profit entity. There's some craziness here. Let's talk about it. Thanks again for joining us. If you are kind of tired of CHITUBOX being anti-competitive, make sure to leave a like on this video and get subscribed while you're down there because, yeah, this is not great. Not great. This is not great. Thankfully, we were able to get our hands on the license agreements for the CHITUBOX SDK, and so a fair bit of it is generally pretty traditional. I'll have linked to these down in that description so you guys can check these out for yourselves. But yeah, these highlighted sections that you see on the screen, not great. The rest of it is pretty standard. This starts off pretty early, and actually their limited license is reasonably decent, but you'll see it gets limited throughout the rest of the document. And let's just go over what they're allowing you to do. You can combine it with your application in accordance with the SDK's usage specifications, enable your application to be used in conjunction with the data obtained by the designated CBD, production, or authorized devices, and C, limited to distribute sample code, whether modified or only partial, or any part of the SDK as an integral part of your application in the form of object code. D, other application scenarios agreed by CBD. So this is the issue that I get here. Distributing the sample code is kind of required if you are integrating it into your own software. Now, what limitations? They don't really say here. Let's go through this. And again, this is for the commercial license, so for profit. Before signing this agreement and during the signing process, you may apply with CBD for the SDK application scenarios needed in a written form acknowledged by CBD. CBD will review these application scenarios and send application scenarios provided by CBD to you through the designated mailbox. After this agreement comes into effect, you may apply with CBD for the SDK application scenarios needed in a written form acknowledged by CBD. CBD will review these application scenarios and send the application scenarios approved by CBD to you through the designated mailbox. Any application scenario, description, explanation, or other information you receive that is not sent via the designated email address is not an acknowledgement of or agreement to the application scenario by CBD. This seems like lawyer speak for just email us of what you want to use it for, and maybe we can figure it out. A little bit convoluted, so that's my understanding. Again, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice, but if you guys have some difference of opinions, please let me know down in those comments. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. This is the problem, the restrictions and obligations. Unless permitted otherwise and limited to, in this agreement expressly, you may not and shall not allow third parties to use the SDK to develop or process any application that is not used to support CBD devices or develop other SDKs. Copy all or any part of the SDK except for the purpose of backup and archive, modification, and reverse engineering, decompile or disassemble or incorporate the SDK into any other software program. Big freaking red freaking flag freaking. Okay, this is a big deal. They're telling you right there under the restrictions where previously they're like, yeah, you can do kind of whatever you want to. We're kind of cool with it. Nope. You cannot incorporate the SDK into any other software program. So if you were hoping that Lychee Slicer was going to be able to use the SDK, you're wrong. They literally can't, according to this. Now, Lychee, I'm sure, is in talks with CHITUBOX. I've reached out to them for comment, but clearly they're a little bit busy right now. So hopefully when we can get some comment from them, we'll be able to update you guys. But that is bad. Decompile or disassemble, you kind of need to do that to integrate it in there. But they're immediately saying you can't incorporate it. So what is the point of providing an SDK if companies that would utilize it are not allowed to utilize it? And literally, this is in both. So a cool feature in Google Docs is you can do a comparison. And we see the comparison is identical. The only time where we start seeing changes is further down the restrictions and obligations, and it's just a difference for the for-profit versus non-profit entities. This is identical in both of them. Now, I understand that they don't want you to provide any third parties with the ability to access application design interfaces that are the same or similar to all or part of the SDK. If you are a competing company, obtain the SDK for monitoring performance or functions for establishing benchmarks or other competitive purposes. Excuse me, you're literally not allowing other companies to use your SDK. This is anti-competitive at best and being a at worst. We don't like that. That's rule number one here, is don't be a and they're really just going against this. So if I'm a competing company, Lychee Slicer, let's assume, and I want to obtain the SDK for monitoring performance or functions, or for establishing benchmarks or other competitive purposes, I literally need the SDK so that I can make my software work. And to do that, I have to monitor how the SDK works, how it functions, and then be able to establish benchmarks surrounding it so that as updates occur to the SDK, because I mean, theoretically there should be updates, that I can track whether or not these updates are good or not. And what they're saying is, no, you can't do that. So it says for the profit subject, and this is where it kind of differs, unless there is a specific agreement between CBD and you, the use of this SDK requires the payment of corresponding license fees. The standard of the license fee is subject to the supplementary agreement between CBD and you. So it could be $1, it could be $1 million, and we don't know. There is no standard to go by. CBD is going to say, how much do we hate them? Give them the price. And so again, this is anti-competitive. And yes, there is nothing illegal about this. As far as I'm aware, this is totally legal. It's just being mean. I know previously I've put a lot of the burden on Chitu systems, but I think the blame needs to be shared by companies like Elegoo, Frozen, Anycubic to some extent, although some other printers are using custom boards. But any company that is using Chitu boards, this is kind of also your fault. Instead of developing your own in-house boards, working with each other to develop a free and open system that works with these printers, you decided to go the easy route, and now it's biting you in the ass. And companies like Elegoo are very concerned about this because they're losing money. They're losing pre-orders. I promise you, the Mars 3 is not doing anywhere near as well as they hope because of this issue. Tom Sadlatter, or Tom's 3DP, we'll card to his channel so you guys can go take a look at it. He did a whole video on the Elegoo Mars 3, their brand new wash and cure station, and ended it with a talk about this SDK and how there's a lot of uncertainty. And the old printers, the Mars 2, the Saturn, those are still great printers. And he said, unless you can afford to spend the money every year for CHITUBOX Pro or are willing to accept the kneecapping inside of CHITUBOX Basic, you're kind of stuck by not getting these new machines. And that's a problem if you are a manufacturer. Now, we interviewed a company that has a solution to this, Atlas 3D and their Athena boards. We'll card to their interview. It's a live interview. I will say there is a lot of cursing in it, so if you don't like to hear that, don't go watch it. But the TLDR of that 3-hour podcast is they've got a board and it's coming. So there is some hope, but I don't want to spend $300 on a Mars 3 to only have to spend another $100+ to actually make it work. Now, there is a software crack out there called Liberating Mars that you can utilize to not even need the SDK, but depending on where you're located, it's legally gray at best. We are actually hoping to interview one of the gentlemen that cracked this, and hilariously, there were 2 guys that did it completely separately, and they actually had it within hours of each other, which is pretty cool. One of them has agreed to do an interview, but timing is going to be a little bit tough. CHITUBOX is not, they're not playing ball here. They're not telling you what the SDK can do. They're not telling you where it's limited. They're not telling you anything about it. There's a lot of verbiage in here that goes on to explain that if the SDK doesn't work, causes problems, ruins things, it's not CBD's fault. It's your fault for not knowing it. And I can't help but think there might be some spicy behind the scenes work on this SDK to have it be a little more than it says it is. The termination is a little rough too, because unless otherwise agreed by both parties, the license agreement terminates automatically 1 year after the effective date. So let's say it's a $25,000 license fee. That's 25 grand a year, theoretically, according to this. Now, of course, the parties can work out other terms, but for companies like Lychee Slicer and maybe Prusa Slicer wants to come into this, as far as we're aware, they don't want to, but maybe they do. That's a price that most companies can't just absorb. They have to pass it on. And Lychee being freemium, right, where you can pay to have better features, mind you, it's like $30 for your first year and $50 after that versus $169 or something like that for CHITUBOX Pro. I know who I would give my money to, and it's not just because they're awesome people, it's because their software is better. I'd give it to Lychee Slicer. But if they have to up their price, it makes it difficult for them to still sell that premium software to people that really want to be more power users. And this is kind of the problem here. CBD also keeps the ability to audit, and it even states in there that CBD is going to pay for the audit. But what does that audit actually mean? And well, okay, they may not actually utilize the audit, but they could shut down production on a company for quite some time as they go through and audit the utilization of their SDK. Now, I know a lot of this is somewhat standard for an SDK, but I can't help but be rubbed the wrong way on this. And here's where things really piss me off. I have been a professional in this industry for over a decade and a hobbyist for 13 years now. They are basically not allowing you to do open source. Notwithstanding any provisions to the contrary in this license agreement, the use, copying, and distribution of the SDK components licensed under the free and open source license agreement are only subject to the terms of the free and open source license agreement, and the terms of this license agreement shall not apply to such components. The relevant free and open source license agreements are contained in the electronic file attached to the SDK. So there are theoretically open source components inside of this SDK, and they are attaching I'm assuming a GPL license to it. We just don't know what those are. You are not licensed, and you agree that you will not combine this SDK with any viral open source licensed software or use it in conjunction with such software, or take any other forms that may be required to disclose, distribute, or license this SDK or the behavior of any or all part of the API. For the purpose of these terms, viral open source license refers to a license granted based on the GNU General Public License, GNU Reduced General Public License, or any other similar license. So basically, middle fingers to you. You can't use it in open source. CHITUBOX from the early days was talking about this system being open and free and utilized by all. Boy, have the times changed. Do you remember when CHITUBOX was all about being free and open and accessible? Pepperidge Farm remembers, but maybe they don't. And this is unfortunate because this doesn't help anybody at all, right? And this thing is 10 pages. By the way, this is just the English version. As you can see, there are Chinese characters. I removed all the Chinese characters from this to not muddy this too much as we're doing the video, and that way it's easier for all of you Yanks out there to go ahead and read. But their full license does include both the Chinese and the English writing, and there are some things in here that state that in the event that there is some conflicting language, the Chinese will supersede, and that makes total sense. I can't blame them. There could be some things lost in translation. This is not the olive branch that we were hoping for as an industry. We could look at the non-commercial, a lot of my problems, the same kind of things, right? So right here, software and updates. CBD can determine the limited support services with respect to the SDK within a determined period of time at its discretion. CBD can use any technical information, feedback, or ideas provided by you to CBD for business purposes, including product support and development. During the term of this license agreement, you are responsible for providing support and maintaining services for your application. You should regularly update the application to at least include the latest version of the SDK provided to you by CBD. So what they're basically saying is you're kind of on your own for support. If we look at the comparison, there's not a whole lot of difference here. We see that the nonprofit says if you are a nonprofit entity, you can use this SDK for free. CBD will verify whether you are a profit entity before and after signing this agreement. CBD may need to collect necessary information from you to confirm that you are a non-profit entity. Your act of providing the SDK to an employer or organization that is for profit will also be the basis on which CBD determines that you are not a non-profit entity. Otherwise, there's a little bit, verbiage changing here, like they removed in accordance with the reasonable judgment of CBD and just put it up here instead. Otherwise, it's just some syntax changes, some formatting changes. Those are your two big changes between the commercial and the non-commercial. And we've also linked right at the top so you guys can see it. That's the non-profit one, and we'll have the link to the for-profit one as well. Ultimately, though, this is not the answer that anybody was hoping for. As far as I'm aware, there is nobody being public about having this SDK. There is nobody being public about the cost of this SDK yet. Because, well, none of us freaking know yet. And until Chitu Systems wants to be more open about this, I'm going to sit here and state that this is anti-competitive. This is wrong. And you are hurting not just yourselves, but the entire industry. And yes, before you go to war with me in the comments, the Elegoo Mars 3 does include a 1-year license to CHITUBOX Pro. That's half the cost of the printer. The Elegoo Mars 3 is slated to come out at $300 US. The software is $169 a year. Great. You get it for 1 year. Should you just go out and buy another Mars? It is basically cheaper, and as far as I'm concerned, more valuable to go buy another Mars 3 than it is to give CHITUBOX the money, because likely Elegoo has some sort of a licensing deal with them that, okay, for every Mars 3 that we sell, you get X amount of money. Elegoo did this not because they wanted to, because there was no better choice. Chitu Systems, Atlas 3D is coming for you with the Athena board and their printers that they're going to be releasing. You guys better get your act together, because, yeah, this is an F. You're getting an F. This is anti-competitive. This does not solve any of the problems that we have in this industry right now. This only, as far as I'm concerned, further exacerbates these issues. Before you guys get all upset and yell at me or yell at CHITUBOX in the comments, I want you to read through this. I've taken a few reads through it. You can see I've highlighted things for my notes and things that I believe are something that you should look at, but read through it. You might have a different interpretation than I do, and I'd love to hear your opinion down in those comments. But this is a tough one, guys. I'm not okay with what's going on because of how it hurts the industry. I can't hate the player. I have to hate the game, right? They played a long con and they won, right? This is an absolute win for Chitu Systems, because they hold all the cards here. Everybody else either has to say, all right, I guess we're going to pay it, or they can't play anymore. If Lychee Slicer doesn't come up with a way to either pay for it or somehow crack it that is in a way that is not illegal or damaging in some way, then they can't work on these new machines. And yes, you can use Lychee Slicer to do all the work you need. You export as an STL, you throw it into CHITUBOX. But as I showed in the CHITUBOX video, which I will card to right here, 1.9.0 has very mixed reviews. Myself, I'll never use it, ever. And other people have had good success and bad success. And I'm here to tell you, if you have a Mars 2, a Saturn, or an older resin 3D printer that is not one of the ones that are just now coming out, right? Not any of the brand new ones. Do not update your firmware on your machines. As of right now, if you update the firmware on your machines, you have locked your printer to utilizing the new version of CHITUBOX, and that's it. The new version of CHITUBOX does not work with these old resin 3D printers, so if you have an older resin 3D printer, don't update to 1.9 because it won't work without the firmware flash, at least. We already have people that have emailed us saying, I accidentally updated my printer. What can I do? My response is, you're going to have to get the firmware from Elegoo. And if they can get it, I've already told them, please send it to me so we can put it in all of our videos about this. So if you make the same mistake, you can go ahead and get it for yourself. I don't necessarily have a solution. I know last time we put out a Google form for people that wanted to build an open source resin board, but funny enough, we were not the first ones to think about this, and Atlas 3D has been working on it for well over a year. They saw this coming from a mile away. Now, had I looked at this a little bit further, I bet I could have as well. And as you can tell, my co-star is a little bit upset about this whole thing too. She wanted to show herself, didn't you, my dear? Let's get a like for the cat. I can get a like for cat, right? Yeah. You know what, while we're at it, this video is sponsored by Victoria, the HR director and marketing director of 3D Musketeers. If you don't believe me, go to our website and see. It's true. We are here to help you get your ideas out of your head and into your hands with full Archpart rapid prototyping. Basically, we make really cool stuff. And if you want to make really cool stuff, you can come hang out with us. And if you're nice, maybe you can even see this wonderful cat. But anyways, guys, I'd love to know what you think down in those comments below. I am a little concerned that this story only gets worse from here. And I'm not exactly certain what the next steps are. I think we really have to wait to see what Elegoo does, what Lychee does, and what anyone that can get their hands on this SDK can do. Because ultimately, it's more of a stunt double than the actual thing that we were all hoping for. But that's my opinion. I want to hear yours. Let me know down in those comments, guys. Stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. Cat, you are going to fall out of this bed. You are overflowing on this bed, aren't you? Don't forget to pet your cats more. Keep making awesome. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed this look into the license agreements for the Chitu SDK, you might enjoy the playlist all about CHITUBOX right below me. Right next to that will be a hand-picked video just for you. Don't forget to leave a like. I will see you all down in the comments. Take care.